One of the most common questions parents begin asking when they start researching private school admissions is surprisingly simple. What do private schools actually look for in applicants? In this video, I'm going to walk you through the key qualities admissions committees are actually evaluating, how grades, testing recommendations, and interviews fit together, and what helps an application feel compelling from an admissions perspective. Because this question usually appears after families begin learning about the admissions process. Parents discover that applications include many different pieces. There are transcripts, standardized tests, teacher recommendations. Students often participate in interviews. Sometimes there are essays or short written responses. Once families see all of these elements together, the process can begin to feel mysterious. Parents start wondering, which of these matters most? Are schools looking for perfect grades? Do test scores determine everything? Do extracurricular activities make the difference? Or is there something else admissions committees are really paying attention to? In reality, private school admissions is rarely about finding a perfect student. Admissions officers are trying to understand how a student learns and how that student might participate in the life of the school. They want to know whether the student appears prepared for the academic environment and how that student might contribute to the classroom community. Once families begin to understand how admissions committees actually think about applications, the process becomes much easier to interpret. Welcome to Admissions Insights. I'm Crystal Stone. Each week I share reflections and patterns I'm seeing from families navigating private school admissions so you can approach the process with more clarity, confidence, and calm. Because when families are trying to figure this process out on their own, it can feel confusing very quickly. My goal is to help parents see the bigger picture more clearly. Today, I want to talk about what private schools are really looking for when they evaluate applicants. Because once families understand what admissions committees actually value, the process becomes far less mysterious. Many families begin the admissions process assuming that private schools are looking for perfect students, perfect grades, perfect test scores, a long list of impressive activities. But admissions officers are rarely looking for perfection. They understand that students are still developing, especially during the middle and high school years. Instead, they're looking for students who show signs of growth, curiosity, and engagement with learning. Students who appear ready to take advantage of the opportunities the school provides. When families understand this perspective, the application process often feels much less intimidating. Because the goal is not to build a flawless resume. The goal is to help admissions committees understand who the child really is as a learner. Private school admissions is often described as holistic. That word appears frequently on school websites, but many parents are not entirely sure what it means. Holistic evaluation simply means the admissions committees consider the entire student rather than relying on a single metric. Grades show patterns of classroom performance. Testing provides insight into reasoning and academic preparation. Teacher recommendations reveal work habits and classroom engagement. Interviews allow admissions officers to observe how a student communicates and thinks. Extracurricular activities can highlight interests and passions outside the classroom. When admissions officers review applications, they look at how these pieces fit together to understand the student more clearly. Although every school is slightly different, most admissions committees are evaluating several common qualities. These often include academic readiness, intellectual curiosity, work habits, character and community contribution, and school fit. Understanding these categories can make the admissions process much clearer for families. Instead of trying to guess what schools want, parents can begin seeing how different parts of the application help admissions officers understand the student. The first area admissions committees consider is academic readiness. Schools want to know whether a student appears prepared for the level of work their curriculum requires. Transcripts often provide the first indication of this. Grades show patterns of classroom performance and how consistently a student engages with coursework. Testing can provide additional insight into reasoning skills and academic preparation. Admissions officers often look for patterns when reviewing these elements. Do grades show consistent effort? Is there improvement over time? Do testing results generally align within classroom performance? These patterns help schools understand whether a student is likely to feel comfortable in the academic environment. Another quality that many private schools value highly is intellectual curiosity. Admissions officers often look for students who are genuinely interested in learning. Students who ask questions, students who enjoy exploring ideas, students who approach school with enthusiasm. Sometimes this curiosity appears in teacher recommendations. Teachers may describe a student who participates actively in discussions or who asks thoughtful questions. Other times, the curiosity appears during the interview. Admissions officers might ask students about their favorite subjects, books they enjoy reading, or topics they find interesting. These conversations help schools understand how students think and how engaged they are with learning. Because schools are not simply looking for students who complete assignments, they are looking for students who contribute to the intellectual life of the classroom. Admissions committees also pay close attention to work habits. Strong work habits often predict success in demanding academic environments. Teacher recommendations frequently provide insight into this area. Teachers may comment on whether the student completes assignments consistently, stays organized, or demonstrates persistence when work becomes challenging. These qualities can be just as important as academic ability. Students who are motivated, organized, and willing to work through difficulty are often the ones who grow the most in rigorous academic settings. Private schools are also thinking about the community they're building. Admissions committees consider how students will interact with one another and contribute to the culture of the school. Teacher recommendations may describe qualities such as kindness, leadership, collaboration, or responsibility. Students may talk about activities they enjoy outside the classroom. Sports, music, art, volunteer work, or other interests can reveal important parts of a student's personality. These details help schools understand how a student might participate in the broader life of the school. Finally, admissions committees think carefully about school fit. Every private school has its own academic culture. Some schools emphasize seminar-style discussions and writing. Others emphasize hands-on projects or problem solving. Some move quickly through curriculum. Others prioritize depth and exploration. Admissions officers are trying to determine whether a student's learning style and interests align with the school's approach. Because a student who thrives in one environment may not thrive in another. The goal is not simply to admit the strongest students on paper. It is to identify students who are likely to flourish within that particular school community. One of the most common mistakes families make when preparing private school applications is assuming that admissions committees are primarily looking for a long list of accomplishments. Parents sometimes feel pressure to present a student who appears impressive in every category. But admissions officers are not evaluating applications like a resume competition. They're trying to understand the student as a learner and as a person. Applications that reveal authentic interests and genuine engagement with learning are often the most compelling. Admissions officers read hundreds of applications each year. Over time, they develop a strong sense for when an application feels genuine. They notice when a student speaks honestly about their interests. They notice when teacher recommendations describe a student who truly participates in the classroom. And they notice when a student demonstrates real enthusiasm for learning. Authenticity helps admissions officers imagine what that student might be like in their classrooms. Another quality that often strengthens applications is self-awareness. Students who understand their own interests and strengths are often able to speak more naturally about their learning. During interviews, admissions officers may ask questions like, what subjects do you enjoy most? What do you like to do outside of school? What kind of challenges do you enjoy tackling? Students who answer these questions thoughtfully often leave a strong impression. Not because their answers are perfect, but because their responses reveal how they think and what motivates them. When families begin exploring private school admissions, it can sometimes feel like the process revolves around individual pieces of the application: grades, testing, interviews, activities. But admissions officers are stepping back and looking at the full picture. They're asking how those pieces fit together. Does the student appear engaged in learning? Do teachers describe strong work habits? Does the student communicate curiosity during the interview? Does the overall application suggest that the student will flourish in this academic environment? When those elements come together clearly, the application becomes much easier for admissions officers to understand. One thing that can be helpful for families to remember is that admissions committees genuinely want students to succeed at their schools. They are not trying to eliminate applicants. They are trying to identify students who will thrive within their environment. They look for signs that a student will grow academically, contribute to the classroom, and engage with the community around them. Understanding this perspective often makes the admissions process feel less intimidating because the goal is not perfection. The goal is alignment between the student and the school. For many families, the most challenging part of the admissions process is simply understanding how all of these pieces fit together. Grades, testing, recommendations, interviews, and school culture all interact in ways that can be difficult to interpret without experience. That's why many families seek out guidance and resources as they begin navigating the admissions journey. When families start the process with a clearer understanding of how schools evaluate applicants, the entire experience often becomes much more thoughtful and manageable. Private school admissions may appear complicated at first, but the core question schools are asking is actually quite simple. Does this student appear ready to grow and thrive in our environment? When families understand that perspective, the admissions process becomes much easier to navigate. If you're early in your admissions journey, or you're just beginning to think about how to approach the process in a more thoughtful and organized way, these are exactly the kind of perspectives we explore here each week. Because when families gain clarity early, the entire admissions process often feels very different. Thank you for being here. If you're navigating private school admissions and want clear guidance each week, consider subscribing so you don't miss future admissions insights. I'll see you next time.